The Tampa Bay Lightning are coming off one of their best performances of the season and now look to continue a hot restart to the NHL season with a homestand finale against the Calgary Flames. Can the Bolts continue their great defense and earn their 7th consecutive win?
You're Locked On Lightning, your daily podcast on the Tampa Bay Lightning, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Josh Sperber here, welcoming all of you into another episode of Locked On Lightning and thanking you for making Locked On Lightning your first listen every day. We're part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And if your team is the Tampa Bay Lightning, then this is the show for you. Today's episode will start with a preview of the game against the Flames. Second time they have faced each other this season. An 8-3 win for the Lightning in Calgary when the Bolts scored more goals in each successive period. A goal in the first, 3 in the second, 4 in the third, en route to an 8-3 win. A hat trick for Guentzel, 6 points for Nikita Kucherov and 5 assists, both tying Lightning records. Jake Guentzel with a hat trick, Braden Point with 4 points. And the Tampa Bay Lightning dominated that one. But now, obviously, things change over the course of the season. Both teams are currently in playoff position, with Calgary sitting in 4th place in the Pacific Division, 64 points, 4 fewer than the 4th place Avalanche, and 1 point over the 5th place Canucks. Avalanche, of course, in the other division in the West, in the Central. Sitting in 4th there. The Lightning in 3rd place, getting slightly more comfortable with a 4-point advantage over the Red Wings with 1 game in hand. And the Lightning still have played fewer games in the majority of their division, only exception being the Buffalo Sabres, who were in last with 53 points. So these are two teams that obviously things have changed since December. J.J. Moser back now, certainly going to be helping the Tampa Bay Lightning. The Bolts in that game did start Andre. In that game, of course, the Lightning did start Andre Vasilevsky, who had 19 saves, 22 total shots, and allowed 3 goals. Vazzy will likely be back in the net against Calgary, with the Lightning having Friday off before traveling to Washington on Saturday and then Florida on Monday. We might see Johansson go against either Florida or Columbus next week. That's something to keep in mind. But back to focusing on this game, I think the Lightning have certainly improved in a lot of ways since that 5-goal win over Calgary, and defensively has been maybe the biggest improvement. That second line of McDonough and Chernak, especially especially Tuesday night, the last game, rock solid. Maybe the best defensive line in hockey. And it just seems like they shut down everyone. And then I think you could tell over the last couple of days that the defense has improved with Victor Hedman's line, with J.J. Moser, even rather than Darren Raddysh. I'm a big fan of Raddysh, and I definitely think he deserves a spot in the Lightning's top 6 defensemen, but I just think Moser adds a little bit more quickness and speed on defense that helps that much more. That is always going to give the Lightning an advantage. Of course, though, Moser in the game against Calgary only played 12 minutes as he ended up finishing that one injured, and it was after that game where he had his long run on the injured list, now back with the Bolts, and has played solidly for the Lightning in his couple games back. Had a total of 47 shifts over 2 games, playing close to 40 minutes of ice time against Edmonton and then and the Kraken. So I think it'll be interesting to see how much more just having Moser for that full game is going to help the Lightning, because 2 of Calgary's goals were scored on the later side of the second period. And I think that it was just JJ Moser not. It could have been Moser not being there that it had an effect. I think that he didn't have an assist in the game, but I think that it's something to look out for, just to see how much more that defense continues to improve with Moser at the front. Usually I talk about power play versus penalty kill as one of the keys, and it is 28th ranked penalty kill for the Calgary Flames. Meanwhile, the Lightning at 12th, but they are fourth best in the league with power play percentage at 27. But it's the faceoffs. The Lightning 16th in the league with a faceoff percentage of 50% against a team that is third from last, 29th. 46% faceoffs won as a team by the Calgary Flames. And this is an area where I think in a lot of times the Lightning have either barely broke even or fallen short in terms of face-offs. And this is a team that statistically they have been better than in terms of facing off against their opponents. But that's usually not the case when they're playing teams, especially in the big games like this. So I think the Lightning getting that face-off advantage would certainly be a big help for the Bolts if they can just get themselves a little bit extra possession time, as the Lightning are certainly a team that enjoys to attack and has a more attack-focused game plan, especially at the start of games. And someone that I really am going to keep an eye on is Gage Gonzalez, because he has played really well. He has an assist in 4 of the last 5 games with a +1 over that span, a goal and 7 assists this season. But every game he just shows how much more he has improved since his last recall to the AHL. And I just have a feeling that he is not going to be going to Syracuse that much more. Gonzalez did play 14 minutes over 20 shifts against the Calgary Flames, but I'm interested to see what kind of impact he has, because things have really improved for him since the month of December. He looks like a totally different player than he did at that time. You look at Gonzalez's stats leading up to just like in that game where he didn't score, by the way, Gonzalez had 1 assist. Now on the season, 1 goal and 6 more assists in the 15, 20 or so games he has played since then. And most of those have been recently, really since the end of January, where this run started. January 30th at home against the Kings, he bagged an assist in back-to-back home games against the Kings and then the Islanders, then in 3 straight games over the course of the win streak, missing the first of 2 games against Ottawa. Didn't record a point against the Kraken, another assist against Edmonton. And Gonzalez has just proven to be so much more of a factor on offense over the later course of the season. Especially since I don't want to say that they replaced Connor Geekie with Gonzalez, but when Geekie was sent down and Gonzalez had come back up, it just seemed like he was on a mission to prove the Lightning were right, that they sent the right rookie down to the AHL. Obviously, Gonzalez with the 2 NHL games of experience last year, but Gonzalez is ready to be on this NHL team full time. He's ready to be a permanent fixture, likely starting in that bottom 6 for the Lightning. But I think that with his ability to play right wing, he could go up to that second line at times. I think his defensive abilities as a forward are something that need to improve. Maybe, he could put on a couple pounds of muscle as well. But I think that, maybe he's used on some of those lower lines with that might, can afford just one more offensive guy. I think the defense needs to improve for Gonzalez, but overall, he has just massively improved his game since getting recalled to the Tampa Bay Lightning back in January. And that is part of what we're going to be talking about in the next segment. We're taking a look at the forward defense, because that was a part of the Lightning's defensive unit that has mainly been focused on Hagel and Cirelli, as they have proven to be 2 of the best 2-way forwards in the league. But I think it has also been the cause of some recent line movement in the Tampa Bay Lightning. And we're going to take a look at some of the best Lightning forwards on the defensive side of the puck. If you're like me, your mornings have to start with a good cup of coffee, but I got tired of settling for grocery store brands that just weren't cutting it. That's why I turned to Trade, and let me tell you, this coffee is next level. Trade is the #1 specialty coffee marketplace in the United States, bringing you fresh coffee from over 50 of America's top roasters. Their experts have taste tested thousands of coffees, curating over 450 amazing roasts. Whether you're new to coffee or know exactly what you like, they will handpick the perfect match for you. I took their quick quiz, and in under a minute, they matched me with a roast that was fresh, smelled incredible, and tasted even better. And my first bag was a game changer. It had such a smooth and rich flavor, and I can actually taste the difference from my usual coffee. And a subscription makes it so easy. No more last-minute grocery store runs or settling for whatever's on the shelf. And if you don't love your first bag, then no worries. Trade will place it for free until they get it just right. Right now, Trade is offering our listeners 40% off your first order at drinktrade.com/LockedOnNHL. That's drinktrade, drinktrade.com/LockedOnNHL for 40% off of your first order on drinktrade.com/LockedOnNHL. Welcome back into another episode of Locked On Lightning, and in this next segment, we'll focus on the forward defense. Talked a little bit about Gage Gonzalez. He's someone that I'd like to see step up a bit more on the defensive side of the puck, a guy who is under 200 pounds, 6'1", 184. Certainly, could use a little extra size at 24 years old. Maybe still a little bit of room to grow as well and add some added muscle. But a big reason why I wanted to talk about the Lightning forward defense was Zemgus Girgensons, because over the past couple games, he has a goal and assist in the past 3 games after recording just 2 assists in the previous 54 games. For Zemgus Girgensons, the last goal was his first as a Bolt against the Montreal Canadiens on the 9th of February and his 90th over his NHL career. Girgensons needs 8 points to reach 200 after 745 NHL games for the Latvian native and former first-round pick in 2012. But Girgensons has always been more of a defensive-minded player, equaling 30 points, but never topping that mark just once back in his second NHL season in 2014 and 15 with the Buffalo Sabres. This year, 4 points through 57 games, but his defense has kept him in the rotation. He has not been scratched this season by the Lightning, has played in all 57 of their games, has never been a healthy scratch, has not had an injury. He has just been a warrior for the Lightning, and a lot of times he is doing the hard work. He is making the checks. He is, rotating on defense. He's fighting for the loose puck and making physical hits to try and open up some chances. And I think one of the reasons that he got switched up was just to try and get him a little bit more opportunities on offense to unlock some of Girgensons' offensive potential. Because obviously anybody in the NHL can be an offensive stud. I mean, these guys are all, well-trained, incredible athletes that have been playing hockey their entire life. They certainly have the ability to score goals. Just there are some players that are put in roles on different teams that don't give them as much offensive freedom. And I think with Girgensons going on to that second line like he was against the Edmonton Oilers, a lot of the eyes on that defense, no matter who is the third player, usually the right wing, on that second line, the eyes of the opponents are going to Anthony Cirelli and Brandon Hagel. So Girgensons can take advantage of getting sagged off on a little bit, getting some less attention one-on-one from defenders, from opponents. And it gives him more of an opportunity to get involved in the offense. And Girgensons did have 1 assist in the win against Edmonton, but he also had some opportunities to score. I mean, the past couple games, he has had good chances right in front of the net. It was against Seattle where he hit the top of the post or the top bar on the underside of it, and it still bounced out. I mean, he's had a couple of really solid chances over the last few games, and that's something that having a big physical presence like that can do. 6'3", almost 200 pounds. But Gergensons is able to just make it, just find some space down low and get in front of the net to screen goaltenders on the offensive side. But I think his quickness, his agility as a skater helps him defensively, and that will always make him an option for the Lightning. Of course, most of the time we talk about the defensive side of things. We talk about the skill of Cirelli and Hagel on defense, and I don't think that can be overstated, but somebody I think who is or a couple players who have been a bit underrated on the defensive side of things have been Nick Paul, certainly, but also Mitchell Chaffee and Michael Eyssimont, who have been among the Lightning's leaders in terms of hits among forwards for the better part of this entire season. And I think Chaffee and Eyssimont are two guys who really excel at being off the puck defensively, whether it's switching on the puck handler for some help or switching off of their man to just make a big hit, pin him up against the boards, anything like that. Eyssimont and Chaffee are usually right in the middle of those kind of scrums. Those are two players who really thrive off of the physicality of the game. And it makes for an excellent combination. Eyssimont is floated between the third and fourth line, averaging just over 10 minutes of ice time per game. Chaffee usually between the second and third line. One of them is usually paired with Nick Paul, who I think is one of the more underrated players on this Lightning team because he always seems to find himself in the right position on the offensive side of the puck to put in some goals or even redirect the puck to make a nice assist. And his size is just enough of an imposing presence that when guys are on his line, they're not targeted as much, I thought, by some of the opposing players. And Paul is, he's built like an NFL linebacker, 6'4", 230, and he is one of those guys that I don't think is, shows incredible or, some kind of otherworldly like Nikita Kucherov-esque skill on one side of the puck, but he's just a player who can do everything well, and just every single aspect of his game is fundamentally sound and productive on NHL ice. And he's such an important part of this Lightning team and someone that I think the Bolts should really feature as much as they can. But I think that having him on the third line, while it might decrease his minutes a little bit, though Paul does get some extra minutes helping out on the penalty kill and sometimes on the power play as well. I like the fact that they put Paul on the third line a lot to just add a little bit more depth and balance to some of those lower lines and have a more sure-handed scorer, particularly on that third line where the Lightning don't always have one. And Mitchell Chaffee has really kind of stepped up a lot offensively. But again, he is just a player that if you look for him, he's on the boards. He's pinning somebody against the wall. He is poking out a loose puck somewhere. He is just so tenacious on defense. And it really boosts the play of his teammates when he is always going to be the first one to dive into a pile and try to get the puck out and try to make something happen. And he might not end up as the primary assister or get a point at all, but you can go back and look at a lot of goals that the Lightning have scored on Mitchell Chaffee's line, and whether or not it's a couple extra passes, maybe a third player touched the puck or a second player touched the puck after Chaffee before the goal was scored, but he'll make a nice defensive play. He'll pin someone against the wall. He'll force a loose puck. And then just like that, someone can turn it right around and set up a breakaway and a good scoring chance. And that's something that Mitchell Chaffee is so good at for Tampa Bay. And it makes him one of their better defensive forwards on this Tampa Bay Lightning team. And we talked about Gage Gonzalez as a guy with something with some improvements maybe needed defensively, but is he also a player with something to prove for the Tampa Bay Lightning? We'll talk about some guys that might need to add a little something extra to their game with some Lightning prospects getting closer to ready for the NHL. When the game tips off, NBA action is just getting started, and there's no better place to get in on it than FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. With FanDuel, you can place live bets throughout the game, so even if you miss the opening tip-off or want to bet on a fourth quarter comeback, you can stay in on the action. And if you're looking for a bigger payout, you can even combine your live bets into a same-game parlay. I love using FanDuel's live betting feature because it keeps every moment of the game exciting. Whether I'm backing my team for a late game rally or picking a player to hit a clutch 3, I never feel like I missed my chance. Plus, the app is easy to use, and when you win, you get paid instantly. Right now, new FanDuel customers can get $150 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. That's FanDuel.com for your shot at $150 in bonus bets. Make every moment more exciting with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. But have no fear, there is also plenty of NHL action on FanDuel as well. They've got odds for the Tampa Bay Lightning game against the Calgary Flames. The Lightning are slight favorites. The money line at -230 on the Lightning with an over-under set at 6.5 for a game to tip off or drop puck, I should say, at Amalie Arena on Thursday evening. Welcome back into Locked On Lightning for one last time today, and we're talking about some guys with something to prove. And first is going to be some breaking news that came in yesterday afternoon. The Lightning with another prospect swap, trading with the Nashville Predators. Anthony Angelo heading to the Lightning in exchange for Jesse Ylonen, a former Montreal Canadian who had 8 goals and 17 assists for the Syracuse Crunch in one of his better seasons. And I think this was a swap of the Lightning trading a smaller, more offensive-oriented forward for a more experienced and more physical forward option in Angelo. Anthony Angelo has already had 30 games of NHL experience, while meanwhile, Jesse Ylonen has played a good bit in the NHL for the Canadiens over the past 3 seasons, but has not been back in the NHL in 24-25. He did come up for a Lightning practice to give them some more even numbers and allow some of the Lightning players in the Four Nations final, so Hagel, Point, Gensel, Sorelli, to rest in the practice before the game against the Kraken, but was traded after that. And Ylonen might have a little bit more NHL experience, but I think Angelo, 6'5", 210, has that extra physicality that I think the Lightning are really starting to look for in a forward. And you look at the other trade that they made, Ryder Korzak switching for Lucas Edmonds. They trade a more offensive-minded forward for a bigger, in that case, slightly younger forward option whose offensive game was coming along, but his defensive game was a lot more polished. And I think that's the case with Angelo. So I'm curious to see how he does in Syracuse. He had 7 goals, 7 assists, and a plus or minus of 5 in this over the course of this season, 41 games with the Milwaukee Admirals, the HL affiliate of the Pittsburgh Penguins. And he is certainly someone that I think could make his way onto the roster. I think having a guy like that on the Lightning's third or fourth line, listed as a center, having a guy like that, maybe on the Lightning third line, move Paul out to the wing, having him at center and just add some more physicality in the bottom six might be a good thing for the Lightning. But I think Angelo certainly has to prove that he can hang with the Lightning system starting in Syracuse. Maybe help out Connor Geekie with another some veteran encouragement. And Geekie, of course, a physical power forward as well. Zemgus Girgensons is certainly a guy who I think needs to keep this offensive run that he's been on lately going. He's just been a consistent presence in the Lightning lineup, which in a lot of ways I think is good enough. I mean, the Lightning have had they've had so many injuries. For the most part, they've been small. I think the Lightning have definitely seen more of just the, quick game or two injuries rather than the long extended injuries like JJ Moser, which is certainly fortunate. But just having a guy and not being the only player on the team who has played all 57 games, it's a small number. It's Girgensons, it's Luke Glendening, and it's Brandon Hagel and Ryan McDonough. Lightning have used 26 different skaters in the season, 3 different goalies, and they have 4 guys that have played every single game this season. Of course, Vasilevsky has not had an injury scratch. He had a health scratch when he had an illness before a home game a couple weeks ago. But other than that, he's been perfectly healthy. And again, like that has been the only problem with that is, for the most part, that's been Girgensons' best trait, just him being in the lineup. The defense has been solid. The offensive numbers has started to creep up a little bit recently, and I think he's someone that I want to see get more involved in the offensive game, maybe keeping him on that second line with Hagel and Cirelli can open him up for some chances a bit more. But honestly, I want to see Gage Gonzalez on that second line. I think that accelerating his development is maybe the most beneficial thing for the Lightning right now, because you've still got some prospects that you're working on in the AHL right now. You're guys like Dylan Duke and Connor Geekie, but Gage Gonzalez is a prospect that is, up and ripe and ready to go. And I think that he needs to just keep doing what he's doing on the offensive side of the puck, and just continue his strong all-around play for the Lightning and really just prove that he belongs on this roster. And he's 24 years old. He's still got plenty of room to grow and learn the game. And, the Lightning are certainly hoping that the former second-round pick is someone that could be a threat down the road. And he's already proving to be an offensive threat, still with a plus-minus of +3 over 35 games with the Lightning this season, and he is one of Syracuse's leading passers despite more limited action with the crunch. I mean, he's just a guy who knows how to move the puck and put it in the right spot. And, I think establishing himself, solidifying himself as a more all-around forward can certainly cement his position in the Tampa Bay Lightning rotation. I still think that we're going to see Connor Geekie again this year. I definitely think that come closer to playoff time, the Lightning are going to get him back up and use him, just even if it's just to have him on the end of the roster as a scratch to just be in a playoff atmosphere and just get some experience soaking that all in. I do expect to see Connor Geekie, and Dylan Duke is certainly someone who has earned more than a 1 or 2 game shot at the NHL as well. I mean, there are some guys that are ready to come up from Syracuse that are trying to take Gage Gonzalez's spot. So he's going to have to lock that down. And I think he certainly can do that. And at least in his most recent stint, I think it's his second or third stint with Tampa Bay, he's been up and down from Syracuse a decent bit over the course of the season. But his most recent call up to Tampa has produced some of the best hockey of maybe his entire life. And I think that can do a lot in terms of solidifying a roster spot for Gage Gonzalez and solidifying another farm system success story for the Tampa Bay Lightning. I mean, they just know how to draft so well, and they know how to work homegrown talent and mold them into really solid NHL players. It looks like that's what they're doing with Gage Gonzalez, and there's certainly some other guys that could use some more molding in the Lightning system. But that is going to do it for today's show. I'll be at the game at Amalie Arena tonight, so feel free to look at our X account at LO_Lightning for some in-game updates live from Amalie Arena. And give us a like, a follow, a subscribe on X, and also, while we're at it, on whatever service you listen to this podcast on. We're available just about everywhere. But thank you once again for making Locked On Lightning your first listen today. And now for your second listen, check out the Locked On NHL podcast, bringing you the daily league-wide stories that matter with the local coverage you love from Locked On. Find Locked On NHL on YouTube or wherever you listen to your podcast. And once again, on YouTube and or wherever you listen to your podcast, please give us a like, a follow, and subscribe. We really appreciate your guys' support. So once again, I'm Josh Sperber, thanking all of you for tuning in, and go Bolts. Have a great